Our featured speaker tonight is Thad Cook. Thad is the IDNR Site Supervisor for Tazewell County, covering Spring Lake Bottoms, Powerton Lake, Pekin Lake, Worley Lake, and Mackinac Fish and Wildlife Service. These are some of the best birding and fishing spots in central Illinois. I'm a regular visitor to many of these spots. Some of them are challenging, and Thad will probably talk about how. So I'm personally really thrilled to have Thad because he knows so much about these places that I visit and that many of you visit too. So without further ado, Thad, you are.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's weird to see myself up there like that. Thank you again for having me tonight, all of you, and allowing me to come and speak, and feel honored to be able to do that and represent the sites that I manage. Pete, I met Pete a couple, I don't know, it's probably been 5 years ago. I probably met you, maybe 4 or 5. We talked, and over the years, I've seen him out birding, and I've probably seen several of you out birding. But I met Pete, and we talked and hit it off. And of course, I was dragging him out of one of our refuges where he wasn't supposed to be. Not really, I'm totally joking about that. But I like to give a hard time about that. But we talked, and he invited me to do this, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come out and share, about the sites and maybe answer some questions. Just speaking formally to you about the sites, and that's what I'm here to do tonight. I don't have a lot of pictures and fancy data and a lot of.
How long have you been doing?
So I started with the state back in 1991. My career is a little bit convoluted, but I started with the State Water Survey out of Peoria, working with Tom Butts on the Upper Illinois River, doing mostly benthic studies, time of travel and dispersion, looking at benthic communities and pollution. That's where I started my first 3-month position with the state. So, and then I moved on to the Natural History Survey, working under Doug Blodgett and Rick Sparks at the Illinois River Biological Station. Stayed there for quite a long time and did all things aquatic, from fisheries to forestry and some birding. And I didn't actually do the birding, I just helped with that in conjunction with some forestry stuff. But stayed there till 2013 and moved laterally into the DNR and started the other half of my career. So I've been with the Department of Natural Resources since 2013. Started over at actually up here in Peoria, over at Marshall and Woodford County State Fish and Wildlife areas, and moved back to closer to home as a site assistant at Mackinac River State Fish and Wildlife area, and then took the position of the site superintendent in Spring Lake, which I was a site assistant from Spring Lake, but I was positioned over Mac. So it's kind of a weird connection there with this satellite site, which I'll kind of go through. I did bring water. You can see this is my favorite drink. It's Diet Mountain Dew. I'm going to be a little bit dry as I talk. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. You'll see my ears
Great job.
and my face red.
Yeah.
I think mostly because I'm passionate about what I do, and when I'm talking about it, I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of representing that. So again, I started with the State Water Survey and went to the Natural History Survey and worked on the Illinois River. The Illinois River has kind of been it's been my home. I was born and raised in Pekin, and went to Pekin Community High School, where I started enjoying the outdoors through the hunting and fishing club, or a local hunting and fishing club in the high school. I wasn't in the French club. I wasn't in the track or football. Hunting and fishing club was my thing, and that's where I learned to appreciate the things and where I'm at now. I learned about Frank Belrose there. We were making wood duck boxes as part of our projects for the hunting and fishing club, and learned about Frank Belrose. And I said, I want to be the next Frank Belrose. I am not the next Frank Belrose. There are many people that would take over and fill that position way better than me. People that I've worked with that are great, great people through the years. But I did get the opportunity to work with Frank. I don't know if many of you know who Frank is. I'm sure most of you probably do, maybe not. Okay, he's the godfather of wood ducks. And he was a scientist with the Natural History Survey, and it was an honor to work with him. And and learn from him. And I can't say be mentored by, but he was a mentor in kind of a long distance way. But we actually got to work together on the river a few times, and that was really an honor for me. But as I was there, I also worked with other people like Doug Blodgett and Rip Sparks, who instilled in me about the Illinois River and the importance of these systems and the natural systems that we used to have in these rivers. So naturally, I was just kind of, attracted to these. This is what I want to do. This is my career. So, and I've ended up I'm now managing the sites that I visited as a kid and hunted and fished in and actually put up wood duck boxes in some of the sites that I've managed, which was really quite like, I don't know what you want to say that is, but it's kind of a circle that came around, and I feel very, very honored to be doing what I'm doing. Enough of that. And this is going to be a very informal presentation. I'm just going to kind of shoot from the hip. I put up a few slides for mainly just to kind of show a little bit of the beauty of the sites I'm honored to manage. I don't want to say I have almost nothing to do with these sites other than managing them the best that I can with the people that also help me manage those, biologists and site staff. I have nothing to do with this picture other than taking it. It's one of my favorite pictures though. It's just, I get to see this every day going in to and from what I call work, if you can imagine that. And any of you that work in the natural resources can relate, I think. It's just really, really cool. I see things that people don't see. I see it every day, and I try not to become immune to it. And it's just there every day. I try to absorb that and take, stop and smell the roses between meek and different birds that a lot of people don't see. Eagles flying in the morning, squirrels. Even the squirrels are interesting to me because they really chew up our vehicles and our equipment. They're pretty cool. But what I'll do is I'll just go through my sites that I manage, that I'm responsible for in this short period of my life. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask and just keep this informal. Pete?
So while you're talking about Spring Lake, I wanted to mention that Jen and I were there over the weekend and saw a single neotropic cormorant.
Oh, cool.
There's usually double-crested cormorants there by the dozens.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a Tazewell first for us, and I think it's only the second time that's been seen in Tazewell County, at least in Newburgh. Additionally, there were 55 black-bellied whistling ducks.
Yes.
Yeah, you've been seeing them.
Yeah, I was going to talk about those.
Okay.
Thanks for stealing my thunder. Pete, go ahead. I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it.
No, it's like the highest number of black-bellied whistling ducks that have been seen in the state.
Yeah.
There was also a common gallinule there, which is really not that easy to find because they're usually hiding in the lotus. But it is a fantastic birding spot, and not every day, but if you go frequently enough, you get rewarded.
Yeah, I will agree 120% on that. Spring Lake is historically was part of the Illinois River, and is a remnant of a backwater slough of the Illinois River that runs along the east bluff of southern Tazewell County, which is kind of, we all know, southern Tazewell and Mason County are big sand areas, and the bluffs above Spring Lake are sand. The lake is influenced by the Mahomet Aquifer, which is what helps recharge that lake every minute of every day for the last, who knows how many years, since the last glaciation. So it's really pretty unique. And, I think that probably lends to what you see there. It's about 15, I'll say 1,200 acres of water. The rest is about 2,400 total acres is what we have there, including the Spring Lake bottoms, which are, kind of seasonal and ephemeral. But the lake itself is very unique. From a plant standpoint, an aquatic plant standpoint, the Spring Lake is one of the few places along the Illinois River Valley that still houses submerged aquatic and floating leaf vegetation. In fact, we have a population of wild rice, Zizania aquatica, which is along the steeps on the east bluff there. And if you're birding, take a look, you'll be able to see it. It's kind of a unique plant. It stands about 12 to 13 feet tall, has a big brushy head. It's the only way I can describe it. It's really, really cool. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's one of those cool plants that is a remnant of, I'm sure, we have Rice Lake, which is across the river. I'm sure that place was named because of the wild rice that was in it. Similar to Emiquon, I'm sure Emiquon was loaded with it at some point. Emiquon, what an awesome place. This is not Emiquon, but it's equally unique. Emiquon was unique in its own way. Spring Lake has kind of been that uniqueness, since we've, altered things in the floodplain. Spring Lake has been kind of one of the standards that's been around for quite a while and houses submerged aquatics, which is important to diving ducks and some, quite a few birds actually. It's also important to the fish and bird communities in the lake. So it's really, really cool. You can see some remnants on the top there. That's white water lily and lotus. It's kind of one of those areas that is, everybody wants you to manage it best for fishing or boating where we don't have the aquatic plants. And I get people that will say, wow, this place is a real mess. And I wait for people to say that because I usually pull up my soapbox and use that as a time not to scold or to, tell them that they're wrong, but to enlighten them and give them a little bit of insight as to why it's important and what it is and how important it is in the state that it is. And, a lot of people just don't know that. And when you explain it to them in a way that they understand, it's kind of cool. It's a way for me to, be out there and be a spokesperson for our communities like this. So Spring Lake is, like I said, about 20, with the bottoms, about 2,500 acres, give or take. There's upland forest. It's a multi-use site. We have camping, fishing, hunting, waterfowl hunting, of course, upland game, deer and turkey. The place is really, really diverse. We have camping. I think I said that already. I even see people out there on their bikes, which is really cool because I like to cycle despite my outward appearance. I really do like cycling. And it's good to see people using that and kayakers, canoers, boaters. It's really great to see the diverse people that utilize the site and birders. Did I mention birders? Because I see those nerds out there too. But I love calling them that out in front of everybody else too as a joke because I'm sure there are people that think birders are crazy. I don't. So I think you're really, really cool people, and I love seeing you there. I think probably a year or two ago, there might have been a Wildlife Society meeting here in Peoria, and 2 buses came to the lake. And that morning was chaotic, to say the least. And I see these buses, and I'm like, what is this, And it's 2 busloads of birders coming from Peoria to see the I think they were there because of the black-bellied whistling ducks. Yeah. Of course, there was a tree that had fallen across the river. So that was blocking their entrance into part of the lake and stuff. But they set up on the causeway, and I, of course, got my camera out and took pictures of them, and talked to the guys that I knew, some fellow people that I know from Forest Biological Station. It was cool and a little bit calming in a way because I was like, okay, I know somebody here and I can explain to them why the tree is there. I removed the tree and they were able to get down, but I don't think anybody saw the black-bellied whistling ducks at that time. That was when I think there might have that was a brood of those ducks hatched out there. And word got out and the birders showed up really heavy duty. And please don't be offended by me saying that. I really, really do appreciate you. If you call me a duck hunting nerd, I'd be all right with that, or a wildlife nerd, I'd be okay with that. But it was cool to see all the birders come and look and wanting to see those black-bellied whistling ducks, which, I knew they were there. I think my son and my nephew took pictures probably 8 years ago, if not closer to 10, 3 or 4 birds. And I thought, that's a weird anomaly. Somebody probably maybe let those go, or they were escapee from somebody's, had ordered a couple online or something like that. And turns out, I don't think that's the case. I think they're there and they've steadily increased in number, but this has been the breakout year for those birds. So That's kind of unique.
They're almost certainly nesting
Yes.
and multiple pairs because, I mean, I don't know if all those 55 were, raised there at Spring Lake, they could have been raised somewhere else. But, I mean, this is a Florida species, deep south species of duck that's taken up residence in the lake. It is bringing birders from all over the state.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad of that. And I'm trying to think, what was the other, there was another bird that was in the bottoms refuge near the restaurant. It was a spoonbill.
Yeah, roseate spoonbill was there a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
About this time.
Yeah, and I was seeing people all over the place, spotting scopes and binoculars. It was really, really cool. I love to see that. I love to see our sites being used from a person walking the dog to the birder who's out looking for putting a bird species on their list. I think that is so great. And it really does bring me joy actually to see you guys there. I joke, so please don't be offended by that. But that's, Spring Lake is, we waterfowl hunt there. So, I can only think of a few times that something rare showed up in the bag. It used to be called Old Squawk, but we changed the name.
Long-tailed duck.
Long-tailed duck. Those have showed up in some bag. Some scoters have showed up. We see those there, which is kind of cool. It's unique. Of course, coots, we see coots, rail. It's a really, really a neat attraction.
Black crown night heron?
Yes. So it's funny you bring that up. So are you aware of the calling and the decoys?
I was there installed.
Okay, great. So that's worked out really well. People have really freaked out about that. But they're interested and ask questions, and I tell them. They're like, what is that sound? What am I hearing wrong? And I explain the whole thing. And somebody asked me if they could steal one of the decoys. I said, absolutely not. They wanted to put it in their man cave. I said, please don't. I said, we'll make you one out of wood or something. Don't steal it. But they, we've had some interest, quite a bit of interest in that actually. And I have seen black crown night heron. When you were there putting them up, you folks jumped one up right off that island somewhere close. So, I don't think that the birds were shy of that place and just weren't attracted in the way that we want them there. It'll be interesting to see if that takes, or if you guys want to do a second year of that. I'd be glad to have that.
I think so.
Place. Yeah. It seems like it works really well. I hear it in the mornings when I go in about 8 o'clock, and it goes for about 15 minutes. The calling does. So it's really, really cool. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to mention that about that project, because I'm really excited anytime we do research, whether it's frogs or birds or waterfowl. We've got other folks with the Natural History Survey doing research that are currently, actually since I've been there as site superintendent. I encourage that. I really think that's important, coming from a science background. And if I can open those gates and be a vector for research and some improvement to the sites, I love doing that. And, I get that support from above me as well. It's cool that we have that. Somebody wants to get a permit to do some research, regardless of what it is. It's cool that they can do that and go. And they, of course, I was super receptive to that project, and so with people above me. So that was good. Does anybody have any questions about their Spring Lake?
How deep is it?
So on average, it shows, because I looked up online and I was reading about it, because I like to look at what's out there being told about my sites and what reality is. 10 feet is probably supposed to be the deepest part. And, I could probably take you to one spot that maybe is 8 or 9 feet in the pipe hole area. But we've lost a lot of depth in that lake over the last, since it was rejuvenated back in the early 80s, when I was coming out of high school. Wayne Herndon was the fisheries biologist involved with draining the lake and trying to reestablish submerged aquatics, because the common carp were so bad in there that they were limiting submerged aquatics, and it was limiting the fishery. So fast forward to 2025, we're going to be doing that again here in 2026. The lake road needs rehab. We have 2 bridges that we're going to be rebuilding. The parking lots need to be redone and brought up to ADA standards. some bollards and painting and such. And quite honestly, the place needs a little bit of a spruce up. It's shown some wear, and part of that is the lake. Biologically, it's kind of struggling a little bit from a depth standpoint, and it's almost choking on its own submerged aquatic vegetation, which too much of a good thing is bad, right? We see that with submerged aquatic. So we're going to drain the lake in conjunction with the other construction that we're doing, because it needs to be done to do the bridges and the road work. And we're probably going to be doing a little bit of dredging, whatever kind of low hanging fruit places that we can get to with, and recreate some deeper spots for fish habitat. But we're not going to do anything real major out on the lake. It would be very, very cost prohibitive. But right now, I'd say the deepest parts of that lake are probably 5 to 6 feet deep, where they used to be 8, maybe even 9 feet deep. But there's a lot of organic material in the bottom of the lake, and that's coming from itself. It doesn't receive a lot of nutrients, so it's mostly spring fed, but there are houses that are on the lake, so that probably contributes to some of the nutrients. But it's certainly not limited by nutrients in that lake at all. It's very, very productive. I can't imagine the invertebrates that are in that water. It's probably very, very impressive. And we see that with the diving ducks and their coots, the birds that overwinter and hang out there.
The water itself, it's spring fed, you said, that's not backwaters, the Illinois River.
So it used to be. So it's spring fed. The water actually comes off the bluff, and it's not connected to its connection to the river was eliminated probably back in the 1930s. Okay. So that is to some degree a saving grace to the place. Similar to Emaquan, disconnection. Its connection is just as important as its disconnection right now. So, having the connection to the river would be important to the river itself, but maybe detrimental to the lake here as we see it. Mainly because of invasive species, quite honestly, and the way the hydrological regime of the river has changed. We've changed it.
So when you drain it off, where do you drain to, and how long does it take to refill?
So she asked how long it's going to take to drain, where will the water go to, and how long will it take to refill. So this lake naturally would drain to the river. It had its own way of meandering to the river. Of course, the water that was coming in from those springs, we secluded that off with levees and control structures. So those control structures go to a ditch that is in the Spring Lake drainage, which was that whole entire Spring Lake drainage from about the Mackinac River down to below Spring Lake was all connected backwater at one point. And we, levied that off in the 30s. It became a drainage district for farming, which is important. But we pump that water back out to the river mechanically, basically. So our water goes to a ditch, goes down to a pump house, and it is put into the river. So if you look at it that way, it's kind of actually a good seed source to the river for all things positive. It is a source for submerged aquatics to be put into the river from here via the pumps and stuff. So, and we've seen that in the ditches. The ditches are alive and well with submerged aquatics, but they also, invasive species are equally distributed that way, which can be detrimental. So, and we do see that in there. In Spring Lake, we've got a couple Eurasian water milfoil, to name a couple real quick. Eurasian water milfoil, curly-leaf pondweed is an invader that's in there. Probably one of the biggest threats right now is Phragmites, which is people call it flag. It looks similar to cattail, and it looks a lot like our native wild rice. But we've been battling it pretty heavily since I got there, before I got there actually, but I've made it one of mine. I've got a bullseye on that stuff. We're trying to control, at least eliminate what we can and control it to the best we can to promote native stuff. So you have a question?
Already asked it.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
So how do you control the rice?
So the Phragmites?
Yeah.
So basically with mechanical, spray, we utilize herbicides on that, which is not something I enjoy doing, but it's a kind of if I had to throw it out there and say, what why are we doing that? If we didn't, it would be completely full of Phragmites. I don't know if you're familiar with Band Marsh. It's not one of my sites. It's across the river. It's a reclaimed strip mine. And you've seen the Phragmites in there. It looks like something out of South America. When you walk in there, it's very thick and basically takes over those areas. We've been doing the same there. My biologist, who I work with, also does stuff over there. And we've been putting a lot of effort into treating that, trying to reduce that. And at the same time, we're seeing, other invaders like bush honeysuckle and autumn olive, teasel, purple loosestrife come on. And if I had to put an advertisement out there for us, is invasive species are probably the biggest challenge, I think, to our native communities and our river in general. We see that with the ancient carp and the invaders coming from the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence Seaway. That is a huge thing. I wish I could rewind and go back and reset some things on what we said.
Are all of the Phragmites considered invasive, or are there some natural
I believe there are
Phragmites as well? But the ones we typically see are the invasive ones.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And to be honest, I don't know that I can pick those out in the crowd. It's a lot like looking at a bucket of silver carp, big head carp, and our native fishes in a small size. They would blend together well. I would have to dig and look and see what the differences in the species are. But if I took a test on it, I'd fail completely on that. I almost feel like I'm a little bit jaded that any Phragmites is bad Phragmites, and that's not the way to be, because we have some native milfoils as well. Eurasian milfoil just is the one that's super aggressive and can overrun things. But yeah, that's Spring Lake. Again, there's it's one of the bigger sites that I have that I deal with. We'll go on to the next. Oh, these were seeing some pictures of Spring Lake. Just Spring Lake kind of has a lot of faces during the year, and I would recommend coming down at all times if you can, spring, summer, winter, fall, and having a look. I think this was this spring after ice off. It was a cool day where the fog was coming across the lake. It was absolutely beautiful. And again, this is one of those things where I drive into work and I'm racing to get to my office to take care of what I consider to be fires in my head. And at the same time, I'm driving right past this every day. And I have to just stop and say, hey, that stuff can wait 5 minutes. I'm going to take a breath here and take a picture and just take a look. These are some bald cypress trees that were planted probably before I was born. I think they've been in there a long time. They're not native to central Illinois, but they were put in here and maintain a little bit of diversity in the lake. And it's one of my favorite views looking out through there. In fact, I'll use the pointer, but this bluff along the back there is where the wild rice is. So if you're there looking and you see you're looking through the bald cypress, you'll see the wild rice along that fringe in the background back there. There's some water willow, cattail, of course, some Phragmites, and the native wild rice back there. And this year it seemed like there was a really good population of it. So that was encouraging to see. And I think when we do the rehab on the lake, that will also probably encourage growth of that plant, because it has a very unique life cycle that requirements clear water, cool water, running water that those bluffs and springs provide. So
Cormorants hang out in those segments.
yeah, yes they do. They whitewash those quite frequently. This tree right here, there was the only thing that I can tell what it was a white heron, white egret. I'm not a birder, as you can tell, but I do know some birds just enough to be dangerous. It was dead, the tree hanging upside down. And I don't know why it was that way. I just left it thinking, okay, it's cool. Of course, I got a few reports that there was a dead swan hanging from the tree. People were seeing a white bird and assumed it was a swan. Our fisheries guys were out doing their spring netting, went over and investigated, and the bird was banded. And it had been banded the year before up near Chicago somewhere. So that was cool to see that. There's some, despite its death, it actually provided a little bit of information of where it was, and that was kind of a cool, unfortunate death, but a neat story on that. again, this is Spring Lake at another time. It just, to me, is like, it has a lot of faces. From the ice being on, looks like a frozen tundra, to open water that looks like a real deep lake you might find in Minnesota, to a vegetated, choked habitat for everything aquatic. Frogs, birds, invertebrates. It is so cool to just take your hand and dip down in the water through there and pull it up and take a look. It's really, really diverse. I just snapped this picture and threw it in there as well. Of course, this is white water lily, a little bit of native lotus in the background there. Pekin Lake, we'll just move upstream a little bit. We're skipping one, we'll go back to that. Pekin Lake is in my book, my second priority or second favorite place. I can't call it a priority, but a second favorite of mine because it's connectivity to the river. It's got a bit of a history. You know, we have the power plant right across the river, power lines going across, which probably obscure and caused some issues with migrators and birds. But the lake itself is a bit troubled. It's been filling in along with every other backwater lake that's connected to the Illinois River since we put in the locks and dams. It does show up on the pre-settlement maps, so it's a lake that's been there as long as anybody can remember. It's a really cool place. It has most of you are probably familiar. I know Pete is. There was what they call the bird sanctuary on the back here to the north this direction. It was a heron rookery and was pretty active until probably 15 or 20 years ago, when buffalo gnats seemed to make a comeback on the river. They're equally detrimental to humans, and they are to birds. Apparently, that seemed like there was a strong correlation. They're disappearing along the Illinois River in some of the places that, like Clear Lake, that had a rookery that was there for a very, very long time. Doctor, what was his name that studied the birds there? It's Bjorkland. Oh, Bjorkland. Yep. That code rookery was kind of abandoned. The one down at Sangonoy State Fish and Wildlife Area seemed to be abandoned.
Have you seen any evidence or any knowledge of the West Nile virus causing bird problems?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm sure it's happening. I have one of my guys at my site has a turkey that is showing signs of that. He was asking me, he said, "What do you think?" I said, looks like West Nile. So I haven't seen anything with bird flu either though. So that's good. Not locally. Pekin Lake is about 1,200 acres, 1,400 acres, somewhere in that range. It was in a HREP, was scheduled to be in an HREP about 2001. Some of you are familiar with the Corps of Engineers and their work on the river through the EMP, Environmental Management Plan. Part of that is to restore backwaters and do restoration on the river. Pekin Lake was one of those sites. Of course, Lake Chautauqua was an HREP. Banner Marsh was an HREP. Rice Lake and Big Lake were under an HREP as well, and probably some of the new nest money. But Pekin Lake was scheduled and had the plans all drawn out and everything. And 2001 came along, and that money was reverted and sent somewhere else. So it's kind of been in a holding pattern for restoration. Although I will say this, it stands alone pretty well by itself. I'm sure the birds that utilize this place are beyond my knowledge. Someone who birds there would probably be able to tell me a lot better. But having water level management capabilities can enhance, our moist soil production and fish movement and a lot of things. But it also could hamper some of the natural things that we see. We're drying out with shorebird habitat and things like that. So you could probably speak a little bit more to that. I know you said the heron rookery is active again there.
The heron rookery is active. It's pretty far north. It's hard to see. You have to look from that parking area far to the north.
Yep.
There's more than 50 individuals there, usually visible in March or so. At least this year there have been.
If the river when the river comes back up and it floods, inundates that forest, It's a little bit safer time to go in there and, motor around and look with a boat. You know, it's a little bit disruptive, but not too bad, because I've been back in there when there were hares in there.
There is so much potential for this location from a birding perspective. It sometimes is one of the best shorebird locations, certainly in the county, but in the area as well. But it has to not have the vegetation like this. It has to be a big mud.
Right, yeah.
And the different, I just want to make a plug for shorebirds, because that is one of the hardest, ducks are doing fine.
Sure.
Because there's so many duck clubs that are being managed along the river, but there aren't that many shorebird locations. And I know the Emaquan and the Chautauqua people talk to one another, and if there's not good shorebird location in one, they'll manage the other one so that there's at least a place for these, tens of thousands of shorebirds to stop and feed. And this could be another one of them, but because it's not connected and it just is dependent on what the river level is. There's not the mud flat there. Like this year, it was all vegetation.
Yeah,
there probably were some shorebirds in there, but you couldn't see.
Yeah, and the timing is probably off for shorebirds. It tends to, like this year, it was growing up with vegetation. Cocklebur was kind of a dominant species in that plant community. The river came up, and I was like, all right, we did something here. The cocklebur just does not care for having its roots wetted, and it died. Some friends of mine were like, you were right. I said, yeah, I'm right every once in a while, despite, what some people might think. And it killed a lot of that cocklebur off. So it's not anything we can control. It is connected. So it does have that connectivity, but it's not anything that we can control, which I'm kind of tossing back and forth, where if I did have control of it, would I do it right? And that's where I'm sure we could work that out, but having that control would be nice. If you do have a small pulse in the river, but that small pulse in the river provides shorebird habitat, maybe at the right time that we would not be managing for it, if that makes sense to you. Just like you said, there's plenty of things going on for ducks, but that shorebird habitat is important. Yeah. I try to do that with Spring Lake bottoms. We've got some largely, say, common smartweed is a real big one that's habitat for, I think, the snipe and rail. So, and that is it can overwhelm a moist soil area. But when I found out through Ariel that she said it was an important habitat for those birds, I'm like, I did not know that. And I kind of feel like I know a lot of things. I did not know that because I was trying to, manage against that. So, but too much of a good thing is bad again. So I try to keep that in mind. I don't discriminate against shorebirds or any other birds. I prefer we just make the habitat and whatever we have, provides for that particular bird, whatever takes advantage of it at that time, that we have it. Sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. And I think that can be as productive as anything. Having a constant isn't necessarily a good thing, because a constant moist soil stand isn't always the best either. And this kind of shows how that lake inundates from the river, coming from, it comes through the back, it backs into the river through here, and then it goes through these tubes and inundates this upper portion of the lake. I think I have one more slide in here. Yeah, so this is an aerial view. So this is where we were looking at right there in that first picture, is back over here. So this is the part that a lot of people don't see. And the only way you can see it is to get up in an airplane. So you can imagine the habitat that's provided there. We still have the moist soil plants. We do have a lot of mud flat there, which is pretty cool. It always been that way. Those lakes were, historically deeper and then filled in a bit. So there's challenges there, and I'd be willing to meet those challenges or work towards those challenges. You can see there, our resident beaver has put in a little dam and has kept that actually a lot full of water. So there's a natural way that maybe doesn't lend too well to shorebird habitat like this over here. So
yeah, so I walked around those areas. access is a real challenge.
Mhm.
It's super muddy in places, and so therefore really not that safe to walk in.
No, you want to have your transponder on.
Okay,
So
yeah,
when you have your phone on you that tells you, your loved ones where you are if you're walking into that place, because you could disappear. You're really, really good.
right, and so the other way to get there is from the south side. So from the Beacon Boat Club, I think it's called, or something, and there is a decent trail that can take you up into there and kind of get you close, but you're walking by an awful lot of unhoused encampments.
That's a huge problem.
It's so it's very difficult and basically makes it unusable.
Yeah. From that perspective, it certainly does, and that's something we're trying to address in a humane manner, and that's very, very difficult. I'm aware of it, and we're aware of it, and there's more than environmental challenges to this position and these sites. Human activity is a huge challenge, whether it's people destroying something or doing wrong or poaching, or the human element is always a challenge, and it's kind of an outlier that makes things difficult, and that homelessness is a huge issue for us. So, with that said, we can only do what we can do, and we're going to do what we can do. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. I think this has been put into the PAT of NEST, which is our new environmental plan for the Corps, and monies that involve restoration efforts on the upper Mississippi River, the Illinois and Mississippi River. So Illinois seems to be, right there with in line with some of the other places that are important. I think they're doing a project down by Chautauqua, possibly another one down a little bit farther towards Lake Meridosha, which are both two big, backwaters that are important burning for birds. We'll just say birds, period, not just birding, but birds. But I thought this was a really good view of what's kind of nestled in, if you think about Peoria, Pekin, Bartonville, the industry that's located along the river, the things that have always been located along the river. It's well documented the number of distilleries on the river, which were important for us, as a growing world. Looking back, probably wasn't the best thing, but it wasn't. It was just something that happened, and we were taking full advantage of the fishery and the mussels in the river and everything that was natural. And this little gem still exists in our back door. I'm glad you get out there. That's really cool. That's impressive, because I won't go out there. I'm just too big. They will be looking for me.
Yeah.
They'll be like, well, I don't know where it's at. And then his transponder went off somewhere here. So we're going to have to start digging for him.
The birds are great there, though. The shorebirds.
Yes.
Again, that's
Yes.
what I'm trying to find, most of anyway.
Yeah, and that rotary is back here, a little bit farther, these bigger trees that are located on the north part of the property. I'm surprised there isn't a rookery in these trees as well. These are some, I won't call them all growth, but they were probably logged a couple times, over the years through the private people that owned this and during steamboat days and everything else that's going on. So pretty cool. A really neat place. I like Beacon Lake. It's in my back door. I have waterfowl hunted up here, and I've done a little bit of deer hunting in there as well. It's not without challenge, so that's for sure. We're going to go back downstream, Powerton Lake. Powerton Lake is about 1,400 acre lake. It's a perched lake. It was formerly Illinois River floodplain. It was formerly agricultural. It was formerly, prior to that, was probably part of the alluvial fan of the Mackinac River back after the last glaciation and before settlement, quite honestly. And likely was forested and a meandering streams and distributaries and backwaters. I would love to go back into the time machine, in the Wayback Machine, and get in there and just go take a look at some of these places. I think it would blow us away what they look like now, and what they look like then. And Power Lake is probably a good example of that. Again, it's a power cooling lake. You see that by the steam. It is one of our bigger recreational area where people can boat and fish. It has a really good fishery that includes some world-class blue cats and flathead catfish. And there are some really big blue cats in there. And also probably some of our biggest alligator carp that were stocked into the lake by IDNR that are being protected in one of the intakes there, which is a good, feather in the cap for fisheries, reintroducing that fish. It's really cool to see those. The fish you see at the state fair probably come out of pouch. The ones that are in the big tank that they display during the state fair. This is to me a really unique lake. This is one of my favorite places to waterfowl hunt. If I could be in northern Saskatchewan in a wetland, or I could be in central Illinois on Powerton Lake, I would take Powerton Lake. I know that sounds really weird to some people, but it's in my backyard. I think it's I don't want to call it a mirror, but it is what we've made it. It does provide some really good habitat in the right times for some really cool birds. I see a lot of gulls there that I couldn't identify if I had to. If I was taking a test, I would fail it miserably based on my knowledge of gulls and the other birds that I see in there. I've seen loons. I can identify a loon. I see them often there, which is really cool. To hear those on the water in Central Illinois, it's like, you feel like you're in Minnesota. It's really cool. And that's kind of one of my ways to connect. I love waterfowl hunting. It's something I've done since high school and been involved with. And it's quite honestly what has probably brought me into this career. And hopefully I can give back to that in the ways that I'm doing. Howard Lake is, we've talked about it. Pete and I have had a discussion there with his wife one day about putting up a platform that you can observe over the fence, since the fence is locked a lot of times in the wintertime, or when it is locked, you can actually get up and look across and see what's on the lake, because that place really seems to attract some weird birds. I can't guarantee it. Some people that see this, probably my friends, will laugh when I say this, but I thought I saw a harlequin duck there one day, and I'm pretty good on ducks. And the bird flew over, and I watched it go by, and I thought to myself, should I even say anything? That might have been a harlequin duck. As I was probably eating a little Debbie snack or a Pop-Tart, drinking coffee, 10 minutes later, I slobbering talking about Pop-Tarts. 10 minutes later, the bird flew over and went away from me, and I got to see it again. And I have to say it was a harlequin duck, which is really weird, but that's, if I had to put it on a map and say, yep, that's what I saw, that's what it looked like. So, when we see, I'm sure anybody that's birded there has probably seen some unique birds. Scoters seem to be there. Several other, what I would consider, big water or ocean birds, coastal birds that I've seen there, which is really cool. Not to mention the number of gulls. I've seen that place filled with gulls and just a menagerie of birds that it seemed like, again, it was like looking into that bucket of Asian carp and gizzard shad and all the other minnow species and trying to figure out what they are. But Power is a really cool place. It is a cooling lake from, even that's kind of has its own history and background. I'm not sure what the future of Power Lake will be. We'll see. I guess time will tell. For now, we manage it as a multi-use site for hunting and fishing and birding. That's really about the only two things we do have. I will say this: we have 80 acres that is located to the south west of the lake, on the other side of the Mackinac. Actually, they call it Goose Ditch. It's in the Mackinac drainage right there, outside of the levee. It's 80 acres of floodplain forest. We don't have any hunting or fishing programs. There's no programs in there, but I think you're welcome to go to those places and visit. But you have to go in from the river. I'm not sure it can provide much birding for you, but it's there. I got to think that there are some warblers and things that utilize. It's a big timber, so it hasn't been logged for quite a while. Some trees are relatively mature. So, but yeah, that's Powerton. Again, that's what I say, 1,400 acres, give or take. That's a pretty big perch lake. It has its challenges as well. human interaction. But it's a really cool place. It's one of my favorites. It is industrial as it is. You wouldn't see this on the cover of Audubon or the Ducks Unlimited, you know, as a march or anything like that. But I've had some experiences there with my kids that I will remember forever. Kids and friends, hunting experiences and just laughs in general, fishing and enjoying that, even though it is, you know, not what it used to be.
So these three locations you talked about all have over 200 species in eBird that have been seen. So
That's really
they're
cool.
all very big eBird destinations for not just Central Illinois, but Chicago birders come
That's really
come
cool.
down here. I know that you have seen them. I think of Powerton, it's boy, I wish we could drive on those dikes
Yeah,
and name Chautauqua, name Emaquan, they all have dikes.
Yeah.
That you can't drive on them, you're not allowed. This Powerton's another one, it'd be wonderful to have, some sort of dike, drive or wildlife drive at Pekin Lake. You know, that would be a really cool thing too. Basically, the only one that has that sort of thing is Spring Lake.
Yeah.
Where you can basically drive around, almost around the lake.
I think Chautauqua does that once a year, don't they? Have
They
drive?
do,
Yeah,
they do once a year, right?
Probably
And
at the wrong time.
it's usually in summer. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it will bring people to nature if we have that, if we have that ability.
I will definitely, I keep those things in mind as when I think, okay, what can we do to encourage visitors? Because, you know, I think we have the other things covered for the most part. Getting new people to these sites, and some of that is birds. You know, that's a good entry level outdoor activity that doesn't require a lot of pair of binoculars and maybe a book or your smartphone, which is really, really cool. You think I'd be better at it. I'm horrible at birding, horrible. But you know, it's a good way of introducing people, you know, like camping. Camping can be as simple as a tent and a fire and some hot dogs or whatever, and, you know, marshmallows. And you know, there were talks about closing some of our campgrounds, and I was like, no, not on my watch. Sorry, we're going to have camping, and I think it's a good introductory way to introduce people to, just like I did. You know, I fished on the Illinois River as a kid, fished at the lagoon in Pekin, some backwater lakes up, Lake Garland, and that's where I started. And I was hooked, no pun intended, and that's why I'm here now. One thing, we're going to go back down south real quick, and I hope I'm not going past my time. You tell me if I'm taking up too much time or if I'm boring anybody, or I can start dancing or doing something to keep you awake. I offer you some Diet Mountain Dew, but I'm very limited on my stash up here. I didn't bring any monster drinks or anything like that, or cookies, but I'll talk a little bit about Spring Lake Bottoms, which are, it's about a 400-acre area that was bought by Ducks Unlimited. They did some fancy dancing in there, some engineering, and turned it into manageable acreage for a host of habitats, from ephemeral wetlands to prairie to upland forests. Well, actually, the bottomland forest oak become. They did some tree plantings in there as well, and then gave that back to IDNR, and we manage it, so it's ours. And I'm very proud to say it's something. It's a really unique area. It was formerly farm ground. I'm not against farming. I think farming is very, very important. But this was a small place we could take, and I don't know if it was marginal, but I think it sort of was. It came up for sale. Ducks Unlimited bought it. It turned it into a great natural area. This is one of my favorite places to go in late summer, early fall, when the Bidens is blooming. This is an important waterfowl food, but also important to pollinators. You can't imagine sitting there, the number of butterflies and different insects that are on those plants. It is amazing. And I have to think that places like Lake Chautauqua, people look at it and see this vast area of, what we call moist soil plants. But our pollinators are looking at that going, this is the place to be. No pun intended there either. This is a good example of, a place that we draw down and manage for moist soil plants, but it also is arid enough that it's kind of marginal. We do prescribed burns in here to help manage. This is a place we had an issue with Phragmites. It was getting bad. It was reaching DEFCON 4. And we, went in and aerial treated some places in the fall, which is the best time when everything else is going dormant. Most perennials are done, annuals are done, and we're hitting those plants at the right time. They're taking those spray or those our chemicals to the roots and handling it that way. It's been very effective. I don't like doing it, but we got more species in here than I care to mention. I think I mentioned them actually: purple loosestrife, teasel, Phragmites, bush honeysuckle, autumn olive, the usual suspects. And there's another one, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's another bad player in the game of invasives. But we do prescribe burns here. I see a lot of, it's really cool to see the activity that takes place in these areas, from crayfish to deer across the board, and waterfowl, shorebirds, everything utilizes these areas. It's really, really cool. I'm proud to say that it's ours, and we manage it to the best of our abilities. It's about I think I told you, it's about 400 acres. We inundate in the fall, so right now we're putting water on. All summer long, we've been, some people have the idea of doing a quick drawdown. I like a very prolonged drawdown that provides the best moist soil plants, also provides habitat for shorebirds and some of the other creatures that are in those wetlands that utilize, from amphibians, turtles, across the board. So
How do you control the water that goes in there?
So the water is gravity fed from Spring Lake. So that was one of the great things when engineers actually did something good that I actually approved of, which is kind of weird, but the gravity fed water from the lake, which comes from the aquifer, doesn't require any fuel. There's no, it's just strictly boards being pulled out and gates being opened. And it's it's the same way that we drain it. Gates being pulled and opened, and it's allowed to drain slowly and come back for the summer growth. So it's actually worked out really well. So it's challenging now. We have the lake is really pretty dry, and that aquifer seems to be running a little bit dry, quite honestly. So it may be a challenge to equalize and make things right with the lake and stuff. But it seems to be going well so far. We're getting water put into those backwaters, and yesterday I saw somewhere around 300 wood ducks. They jumped out of a little wooded slough that I was not expecting at all. So that was encouraging. Cool to see too. Our summer duck doing its thing. This is one of the areas that we inundate. This is duck line here. We do hunt that area. We only hunt it for 3 days a week. 3 days a week throughout the year. So for 60 days, 3 days a week for 60 days. This is an area that we had Phragmites. This is a good example. You get that hold on. So this line of plants right through here is moist soil in our desirable stuff that we're looking at. This lighter colored vegetation is taller in the background. This is Phragmites that we sprayed. We've treated with aerially with a plane, a helicopter, a drone, and by foot, and with a wagon and some other things, spot spraying. And then beyond that, the dark green is the Phragmites that is on a Corps of Engineers sand pile from the river. They dredged and put sand on this side of the levee. And in the very, very background, that thin green line is the agricultural levee that protects the whole Spring Lake drainage. And then obviously those are the trees on the main stem river, on the main channel border. But this is a good example. That Phragmites is almost non-existent now, which is really cool. This picture was from a couple years ago. It seems to be working, but there's, again, this summer we had purple loosestrife. I came out here after things grew up and blossomed, and there was this huge colony of purple loosestrife. I almost cried. I really did. I was like, oh man. So we jumped on it, had a contractor come in and spot spray it and treat it before it went to the seed. So it's just a challenge and continuously with invasive stuff. So, but it's, not without benefit. It seems to, I pulled in here in the springtime, which this particular Spring Lake Bottoms was designed for spring habitat for waterfowl. So with that, I think there's some benefits to other birds as well, but I pulled in here and this place erupted with thousands of birds, this small hole. I was just blown away. I did not expect them to be in there. And it was really cool to see that. But it is it's a challenge, but like I say, it's worth that effort to manage it and make it the best we can make it. This is the Manito Pheasant Habitat area. This is one that wasn't on the list. So this is located east of the lake, approximately 3 miles. It's along the corner of the Manito Blacktop and the Spring Lake Blacktop. It's a arid prairie. We call it a pheasant habitat area, but I don't think there's been a pheasant in that place for a very long time. We actually have more quail than we do pheasants there, which is great. Of course, deer utilize it. We used to plant some food plots in there. I don't do that anymore. We've actually reverted to trying to restore the prairie and put a lot of effort towards that and get the native plants that should be there. It was overgrown with brome and prickly pear, which isn't, not non-native, but it can be challenging. But we do prescribe burns, and we've been managing that pretty heavily in the last 4 or 5 years. Greg Tag, who's I call him my biologist, but we work together. He's a great guy to work with and habitat oriented, wildlife oriented. Great guy to have in our arsenal of people working towards managing these sites. It's great to work with him. I really appreciate it. This was a good fire too. I think this was a growing season bird, I think. So this was actually done during the summer, trying to target brome and some of the other grasses that shouldn't be growing there. And we've done this a couple times. We've actually had those areas treated with herbicides because brome is not fire. It doesn't react to fire. It's not afraid of fire. It actually will grow just like the rest of everything else. So we attack it with some spray and then come back in. And once it starts greening back up, if there's any left, we'll go in and do a prescribed burn. And it's worked out really well. This is a good example of that. So this is brome grass in the background. You did a growing season burn. And the prickly pear was just so thick in that area. You couldn't see it. It's covered by the brome. And those prickly pear were popping as we were doing the burn. It was really kind of eerie, the sound they were making, but we've thinned them out a bit. We're moving towards making that a better prairie, better habitat for whatever birds want to inhabit it. So I don't know what birds would utilize that. I don't know. Sparrows?
Lots of grasshopper sparrows.
Okay. Yeah.
Blackbird.
Yeah. I've never sat there and looked for birds. Generally, again, I'm racing to and from, trying to put out, not fires, but, trying to put out fires. And so I have to stop and smell the rose there too. It'd be interesting. I see doves in there, but, and a few quail when we do burns, but that's about it. But it's 80 acres, and it's kind of off the map a little bit, but it's another place that is in Tazewell County that's under my jurisdiction, and we try to manage the best we can and make it the best habitat we can. So I'm excited about it. I'm glad we're doing what we're doing. We've had some local Pheasants Forever folks come in and do some volunteer cutting of birch trees, Siberian elm, and some other trees that are growing in the periphery that are seeding the prairie with bad seed. So we're working on that. It's nice having that relationship with those guys. Same with Ducks Unlimited. They've helped us out a lot in our local sportsman's club. Mackinac River. So this is one that Pete was talking about earlier. It's about 1,440 acres. It is very, very unique. It's in the Mackinac River Valley. We have about 2 miles of river front on our property. that we have canoe access. People do floats there all the time. There's a lot of activity. There's fishing, fly fishing and different things people do there. We do have hunting programs here. This is a sunflower field that we plan for. We say it's for dove hunting, but I see it for so much more than doves. And I know it's it's a byproduct, but it does. I've seen some birds utilize these dove fields at the right times. And again, I'm not a birder, but the diversity of birds that utilize these fields when dove season's over, when deer season's over, in the springtime coming back, or in the fall going down, it's pretty interesting to see. I wish I was better at birding, because I think if you were to sit in some of these fields to see what happens, that somebody that actually knew something would probably be able to give a better idea of what's happening with those birds. But it's really cool. This is just a picture I took. I thought it was interesting. This is probably late June, early July. The sunflowers are about done. Of course, there's dust. There's 1,440 acres. We have 2 nature preserves in the wooded areas. Pete was mentioning that he's seen some really unique species there, and that those deep ravines that are located on that place. And it was owned by Parklands at one point. We either worked with them in conjunction, they donated to us, and then we did some purchasing of other lands throughout the years, and now we're cumulatively 1,440 acres. But some of those areas with the deep ravines have some, I think, a unique species of plants, and that's why they're in the preserve. But in addition to that, I think they kind of lend to some of those migrators, neotropical migrators. They're deep ravines. Guys that deer hunt there usually worn out when they haven't harvested deer and have to bring it up out of those ravines. They figure out how deep those ravines actually are. So it's pretty unique in that way. And I think the Mackinac River Valley is a natural corridor for migration. It also is a good area for anything that's in that river. The Mackinac River is probably one of our cleaner rivers in Illinois, and that's kind of a unique part of this property. It's my understanding that DNR purchased and was planning on putting the fish hatchery here because of the Mackinac River. I don't know that for sure. That could be just rumor or wives' tale, but that's what I was told, and I thought, I'm glad the fish hatchery is where it's at. It's kind of located in the middle of where it's at, utilizes the aquifer. That kind of left this place alone a little bit to be what it is. So we've done, Greg and I have done some, and other people. It's not just Greg and I got to say, I got to give credit to the other biologists, natural heritage and wildlife and fisheries have all been involved. But we're doing restoration efforts here where we've got some areas that have grown up in cedars and bush honeysuckle, autumn olive. We're clearing those out and trying to restore prairie. I hate to say it, but you can't go wrong with prairie. I think when you're doing restorations, at least beginning, having a place you can do prescribed burns and manage is rather than it sitting idle and growing up in some of the invasives we have now is probably one of the better tools we have. So we're doing some restoration there and continue to try to keep the prairies that we do have there in a healthy state. So it's a neat place. I really like Mackinac. I would love to have a house back up this direction on the hill that overlooks this area. It's beautiful. If not a house, just give me a seat, a chair up there that I can sit in and look at it once in a while when the sun's going down like it is right now. So, in a satellite of Mackinac is Isle Dillon, which is a small habitat area. It's about 80 acres. It's in the very southeast corner of Tazewell County. Mostly, I can't say mostly, but it's prairie, a mix of prairie and forest areas. There's a few small wetlands on it. It's 80 acres, so there's not a lot there. So some wetlands that we manage, also some prairie, but there is some, we have agriculture on these areas. This is obviously an ag field we have. So we have agricultural leases on these places that, we allow farming and charge those guys and as a cooperative effort. And they're strictly managed how they farm those areas. So Isle Dillon is one of those. I think of that 80 acres, there's 70 of it is quote unquote huntable. And there's a very small portion of it that we have agriculture on, farm field. But it's a small satellite of Mackinac.
Can you tell me where this is located?
Mackinac River,
Well, I know where the river is, but where is this property?
this particular property is right down by the canoe access, really like the river is within a stone's throw of this, where I'm standing.
Okay.
So, if you look on the map, this road back here is called Schlappy Road. And there's it goes east and west, it's a gravel road, and there's another gravel road that goes north and south, and it's called Cook Road, if you can imagine that. And they didn't name it after me. I was not around when they named that road. They wouldn't have named it after me, they would have named it after somebody else. But it's Cook and Schlappy Road, and that's how you access the canoe access area. It's a really unique place. We have one of the big events there, we have it's not us, it's the American Legion in Mackinac, has a float, somewhere in the range of 700 people that they float from a private area upstream and exit on our property and go up to the American Legion, and it's all for breast cancer and another one for prostate cancer. And those are two really big events. 700 people coming off that river in a small area. It's quite impressive. It's really cool to see, and then they have fun doing it. It's a money raiser, and I think people get introduced to the river in that little event. I think some people that normally wouldn't kayak or canoe get out and spend time on the river and see what it's like, and probably are caught up in purchasing a kayak or canoeing on their own. So it's a neat place. Anybody have any questions about that? This is just a prescribed bird we did at Mackinac, where we're trying to eliminate some of the woody species that were growing in there. You can see there remnants of those here and there. And right adjacent to that is some agricultural area. Actually, you know what? I think this is Isla Dillon. Looking back on it, I think this is Isla Dillon. It's a small prairie in that agricultural area of that 80 acres. It's either Isla Dillon or it's Mackinac River. They're very similar. Isla Dillon has a small stream that goes through it as well, which is kind of a unique part of that place. That is pretty much it. I don't know if anybody has any more questions. I know I'm trying to cover all my sites and give you kind of insight of what they all are. That pretty much covers most of them. This is a former picture of me in a former life, collecting water quality on the Old River in the middle of January in airboat through the ice, sub-zero temperatures. It was fun.
Okay, I have one.
Yeah.
You didn't mention North Park of Spring Lake, the
Right.
woods.
Yep.
And that has a sign that says active hunting in progress that's put up in November, it's still up in April or
Yep.
something. But I think that there is no hunting on the drive-in to the left.
Correct.
Okay, so that can be hiked.
Yeah, and you can go in places where they're hunting as well. So you're not kept out of there just because you're a bird, I promise.
Well,
I did write on there, Pete, you are not welcome here.
yeah.
Stay out, Pete.
Yeah, I'm not worried about
Yeah.
that so much. Everyone's just worried about, peeking around when they're active hunting.
Yeah, so it's archery hunting or squirrel hunting. So it's you're gonna have to look like a deer. I wouldn't wear those pants.
Okay.
I'm very different color than that. I don't know if that helps you out there, but you're those places where it does say hunting in progress, unless it's shotgun deer hunting. That's the only time that you can't get around. So we have hikers that go there during archery season all the time. So feel free to hike those areas as well. Those trails are open all the time because we don't have a gun season there. But Mackinac River, we do. But that place, I'll modify the sign just for you, I promise. I might even put your picture on it. Like,
Okay. This guy's over.
yeah, this wanted. Wanted. Yeah, so and if there's a place that you think you can't access, please holler. I'll try to respond quicker than I normally do. It's text at midnight. I'm not sure why you're doing that, but that's okay. The bird picture at midnight. He does that. I'm kidding.
Any
He
other
does not do
questions
that.
on that? Might be a way.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions outside of that, if you have questions.
Last chance for questions. Okay, Thad, thank you very
You're
much.
very welcome. I hope I didn't bore anybody.